StraightallDay.com.
You are now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is the middle class curse. Before we get into this, I'll remind you all of two things. First of all, my text message number is down below in the description. Once we start sending that message out again, you'll be getting more of that. You'll be getting more knowledge and information about that when we start sending it out again. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is where you work with me directly. That's where you get me as your direct coach. That's where I can help you get your business in order. Start your business if you're launching. Move your business forward faster if you already have a business. Get you into business if you're maybe looking to transition out of being an athlete. Maybe you're in the military. Maybe you've been in corporate. You want to get out of there or out of the government. I can help you with that. We are working with people right now who are in all those situations. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. See for yourself. All right, you can see our receipts, as you all like to say, or as some of you call it, social proof. And then you can take your next step to getting to working with us. Again, that's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Link is down below in the description. So this topic here today, the middle class curse. First of all, I just did not too long ago a 4-part series on why there will be no middle class, starting in episode number 3143, so about a month ago. And today I'm going to talk about the curse that is struck upon you when you are part of the middle class, and you'll understand it once I get into it. I don't really need to give too much background on this one. And so I will say, though, just a month ago, as I already mentioned, that 4-part series that I did on the middle class being the middle class and why it is no longer going to exist, that was more on a tangible, strategic, and logical level. Today, I'm going to talk about it more on a mindset and energetic level, just so you understand. So I'm going to explain to you today, if you are born in and or you currently reside as part of the middle class in the United States or really anywhere in the world, doesn't matter what country, this is the worst position you could possibly be in on a mental level. And I'm going to explain why. So that previous series, again, was tangible and financial effects on the middle class. Today, it's more about the internal aspects, internal meaning you personally, of what happens when you're a member of the middle class, how it affects your thinking, which in turn affects your actions and in turn affects your outcomes. So please listen closely so you can understand your position, any of you who considers yourself to be middle class. Point number one, topic once again today is the middle class curse. First thing you should understand is that when you are from the lower class, let's just talk about people who come from the lower class. You grew up poor, you grew up broke, you were in a situation where sometimes you missed a meal. You didn't have breakfast, lunch, and dinner because there was no food. There were times that you wanted to eat and you couldn't eat because there was nothing available. Times you wanted to buy something, you couldn't buy it because nobody could come up with the money, and it might not even been that much money. All right, that's the lower class. All right, so any of you who's never missed a meal, you're not lower class. If you never missed a meal, you always had breakfast, lunch, dinner. You always had some type of gifts for your birthday. You already got something for Christmas. There was always a Christmas tree. You're not lower class. Okay, I'm talking about people who didn't have some of these things, and these things that you see on TV and it seems normal, everyday things, they just seem basic. Even if your family doesn't have a lot of money, you always had things. That's not the lower class. Okay, so I'm not talking to you if you fit that description. I'm talking to people who didn't have these things. When you are in the lower class, you have the mandate at some point on some level, whether it comes from yourself or it comes from someone directly saying it to you, to go help the family because the family doesn't have anything, or to go help yourself or help the people around you because nobody around you has anything. And if you ever want to have something, you better go do something to go get it, because otherwise it ain't coming. You must figure out a way to contribute to, again, either your own situation or your familial situation if you have a family around you. If you come from the lower class or your family was poor or destitute, as I described, this is the kind of mindset that gets ingrained in you without anybody even trying. See, you don't need somebody like me to be on a podcast or a YouTube channel giving you motivation every day. You may appreciate it, but you don't need it every single day from the time that you begin, because it's already ingrained in you, because your situation was so fucked up, you had no choice but to be motivated to go do something. You didn't need to hear anybody hyping you up to go do something. You knew if you did nothing, you would be in an even worse situation. It would just get worse from wherever you already were. This is the lower class. And I wouldn't be surprised to I wouldn't be surprised to learn if this was directly told to you again by somebody in your upbringing, because your family and community didn't have anything. You didn't have luxuries of relaxation. You weren't afforded an opportunity to relax much. As soon as you were capable, you were out looking for ways to create or have resources, again, either for yourself or for the people around you. You may have missed some meals, as I said. If you were incapable of doing this, you didn't eat. If you didn't find anything, you literally did not eat. So here's where you can see, let's say in popular society, you'll see a lot of gangster rappers who come from this background. They rap about how poor and broke they were, the risks that they took in order to create a better situation for themselves. Also, you see a lot of professional athletes. Is starting to change a little bit in today's era, but let's say a couple generations back, a lot of professional athletes came from backgrounds like this. Then there are other people in other aspects of life as well. I'm just using entertainers and athletes because they're very visible, and many of you can recall hearing their stories because they're well-known folks. Many of them don't make it to tell their story. Let's be clear about that as well. Only a few make it, but the few who do, they tell you about all the things they had to overcome in order to make it. So people from the lower class usually have an internal desire to do something, because if they do nothing, they're going to get buried at the bottom. So some people you hear told these stories. Jay-Z is an example, how he was broke into projects and he decided to get into drug dealing. 50 Cent, similar situation, didn't have either of his parents around in his formative years. He was with his grandmother who didn't have the resources to look after him much. He ends up in the streets, almost gets himself killed, and builds a whole rap career around surviving that. In the sports world, you get someone like Allen Iverson, who came from being poor, not knowing his father, having to do a stint in prison when he was in high school, damn near losing his future because of it. Coming back from that, going to college, being this great talent, ending up in the NBA and becoming a superstar in the league. So there are many stories of people becoming successful. And again, I'm using entertainers just because they're very well known. But this is not a comfortable situation that these people come from. There's no comfort in this situation. They do nothing, they get buried down there at the bottom and forgotten. So this is why the mindset of motivation, determination, discipline, and self-belief, even when it's based in nothing but your own faults, is innately ingrained in people who come from these type of backgrounds, because they really don't have a choice. So people from the lower class never come to me asking how can they get motivated to do the work. All right, that's usually not what they're asking. They may ask other things. That's not the main thing that they're asking for, because they already got the motivation. Their living situation and the background that they come from is the motivation. And in the world that we live in today, because it's becoming more comfortable and all of us have access to more and more material that may make you believe that you can relax, it's actually not as strong of a drive now as it would have been 25 or 35 years ago for people, even from lower class backgrounds, simply because you have so many people around there basically telling you that your situation may not be that bad. It's okay. You can relax. And you have a lot of things distracting you from the focus that you would have had we not had smartphones and the internet. So it's actually, this edge is getting blunted a lot in today's world. But if you go back 25 or 30 years, this edge was extremely sharp for the people from this background. For example, I saw this on X the other day, and someone was mentioning this, and I believe it to be true. The more I hear it, the more I believe it to be true. That 25 or 30 years ago, a lot of players that we saw coming into, this is specifically in basketball and NBA, a lot of players we saw were coming from situations that were kind of lower class situations. Athletes, just athletes in general. Let's just stick to football and basketball, two sports that I follow the most. That there were a lot of athletes coming from that background, poor backgrounds. They had nothing else to lose and everything to gain by making it as an athlete. Their family needed it, needed to get their mama a house, they needed to pay off no bills, they needed to help grandma out, and nobody else in the family was going to make it if they didn't make it. So they did whatever they could to try to make it. Then they made it and became many of them became household names. I gave you an example of Allen Iverson as one, and there are many others. In the world that we're living in today, the era we're living in today, looking at basketball, and again, I heard someone say this, and it is making more and more sense to me the more I think about it, that nowadays you get a lot of players who are coming into the league very talented, but they're not coming from poor and destitute backgrounds. Like, many of them are coming from actually upper middle class and upper class backgrounds, because you got a lot of kids of former basketball players now growing up and joining the NBA. Kids who are coming from, again, more well-to-do backgrounds. Now, Does this mean that they're worse or better basketball players? No. But I do believe it contributes to the fact that the NBA, just looking at basketball itself, is it seems like the players don't have as much internal drive to just go out and compete and win as they used to. Now, one of the factors is what I just described, that you have players who are coming from backgrounds where their families will be okay whether they play in the NBA or not, as opposed to in the previous era, a lot of players want to play in the NBA because this was the only way they could help their families out. These players you see today, many of them have other options besides the NBA. And the world has provided more options besides the NBA. And on top of this, the players are making a lot more money now than they were making 1, 2, 3 generations ago, which means that the drive to just succeed and compete is superseded by the fact that, well, I have all this money. If I don't compete and I don't even play in the games and my team doesn't win the championship, well, I made all this money anyway. So I really have nothing to lose if I don't win the championship. What did I lose? I didn't lose anything. Look at all this money I got. So all of these things contribute into it, but it adds to this conversation a little bit more tangentially. But let me move on to the next step. Today's topic, once again, is the middle class curse. So we just talked about what happens when you come from the lower class, the mindset that is ingrained in you just because of your situation. Now let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, which is the people who come from the upper class, the rich and the wealthy. You, if you are rich or wealthy, if your family is rich or wealthy, and you're born into a situation where the people are rich or wealthy, you have a duty, a mandate to your last name to keep the dynasty going. Right? You have to maintain the status and the greatness, for lack of a better term, that has been created by your family, and you are not allowed to mess it up. Now, you are not allowed to fuck up the reputation that your family has built up to this point. So you think of President Donald Trump. He has multiple sons, but his youngest son is named Barron Trump. What I believe he's in college now, as of this recording. Do you think that Barron Trump, when he grows up and gets out of school, do you think it will be acceptable if he was to become a drug addict and he just fucks up the family name and he screws up with the money that his father is going to leave him? You think that's going to be acceptable? Hell no, that's not going to be acceptable. Why won't it be acceptable? And this has nothing to do with it being Donald Trump. This applies to any of you who comes from an upper class background, or any of you who is let's say, a patriarch or a matriarch of an upper class family. You know the answer to the question, which is this family's name means something. Our reputation means something. Our status means something. And you, child, or next in line, you are not allowed to mess this up. You must uphold what we have built. And if you don't uphold it, then you are staining the family name, and there's going to be a problem. See, this is the positive benefit of coming from this type of background, is that you have something that has already been built that you must maintain. It's a mandate that you maintain it. You can't opt out. For the most part, you can't opt out. You must maintain it in some way. It doesn't mean you necessarily get told what to do for a living. You might, but it's that whatever you do, there's a certain code of conduct that you are to operate by. And you can't just go and mess it up. And if you go mess it up, then you're a stain on the family name. All right. Why do you think people have such scorn for Prince Harry from over in England? You know why people have a lot of scorn for Prince Harry? It's not because of specifically what's happening in his relationship or the way he presents himself in public. That's part of it. But the bigger part of it is that he's not maintaining the dynasty. All right. He is putting a stain on the dynasty, and he's making himself look like a little bitch by allowing his wife to control him. That's at least the way it seems from the outside looking in. It looks like his wife's controlling him. He is not being the man and running things the way he's supposed to, the way that someone from a royal family is supposed to. He's allowing the woman to run things instead of him running things, because the woman is coming from outside the family. He brought her into the family, and then she got him to extricate himself from the family. And people are looking at him like, dude, what are you doing? Right? You're going to give up the dynasty that you come from to follow around this woman? What are you doing? And he looks crazy. And I can understand, even though I don't pay a ton of attention to royal family politics, I can understand why people who are admirers of the royal family look at Harry and say, this guy is a disgrace to everything that we've been looking up to for centuries, going back to this royal family, because he ain't upholding the reputation that the family built, especially as a man in the family. It's even worse when it's the man in the family, because the man is supposed to lead. So when you're born into the upper class, there's a family name you must uphold. It is ingrained in you from childhood as a personal responsibility for you to uphold it, whether you like it or not. And I have heard from people in all my years being online. I've heard from people from all different backgrounds, and I've heard from people from this kind of background that I'm describing who don't like the burden of having to uphold the family name, because it's been put on them by their parents from a young age that you are going to uphold the family name, which means you're supposed to go into these directions, not do these things over here, pay attention to this stuff. And this is the direction that the parents are trying to steer kids in. And again, one of the challenges for parents who are from the upper class backgrounds these days is because your kids now have access to the internet, they can see a lot more options for themselves than they could have seen in 1997 when they were growing up. Same age in 1997, they see a lot different things than what they see in 2025, simply because the options are available, which makes it harder for the parents to ingrain the worldview that they want their kids to have. Because again, kids are being inundated with a lot of messages from a lot of different people besides just mom and dad, depending on what you allow your kids to do. Now, there are kids out there who don't have access to everything because their parents are controlling it, but different conversation for a different day. So it is not an option or a choice whether or not you're going to uphold the family name. I've had athletes come to me and tell me, well, Dre, I want to play a sport, but my parents want me to become a lawyer or a doctor because it's the thing that would be best for moving the family name forward. And they think it's just a waste of time for me to try to play basketball because I'm probably not going to make it, and et cetera, et cetera. I heard all these conversations, and not just for basketball. I've heard from girls who are in figure skating, horseback riding, young ladies who are going into pageants and beauty contests. I've gotten messages from these people because their family is trying to steer them in a certain direction. They want to go in another direction, and they're trying to figure out how can I converse with my parents to let them know I want to go do something different than what I've been told. So if Prince Harry from England, he was a middle class guy. Nobody would care that he was getting punked by his wife, or at least it appeared he was getting punked out by his wife, because in the middle class that happens all the time. All right, nobody cares. See, we're going to get to the middle class in a moment, by the way. When you come from the upper class, the most important thing ingrained in you is the respect of the family, the name of the family, everything that was done to put the family into the position that the family is in, the fact that you have the privileges you have because of the family name, and you are now responsible to keep it going at worst and to make it better at best. But to make it worse is completely unacceptable. All right, you will be shunned and you will be a stain on history if you make the family name look bad. And again, this is the issue that people have with Prince Harry. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is the middle class curse. Number 3, the middle class are the people who have it the worst. If you come from the middle class, you have the worst of this. So I told you some of the downsides of the lower class. I told you some of the downsides of the upper class, and also the positives of both. The lower class has the positive of motivation is ingrained in them. Upper class have the positive of at least you're in a good situation that you just have to maintain it and not mess it up. You're already in a good spot. Middle class, you get neither of those. All right, you are not quite so motivated because your situation is not that bad, and you don't have a dynasty to uphold because you don't come from a dynasty. All right, so, and if you do nothing, it's not like you're going to be in a good situation if you do nothing. You're kind of in an average situation. Mentally, you're average. You may be resource-wise, average. Attention-wise, notability-wise, average. All right, everything's average when you're in the middle class. This is just the middle. This is what happens in the middle. Everything's average. It's just okay. For the very reason that you're in the middle, it's not bad enough that you're forced to go do something like the lower class are. You don't need to get out of your current situation. It ain't terrible, and it also ain't great. It's okay. It's good enough. Your family will be doing all right, even if you're average or worse. Or if you're a complete fuck up, your family will be okay. You don't make the family name look bad because the family name is not a thing. And your family doesn't really need your contribution. If you do nothing to help the family, that's all right. Nobody cares. Your family's also not doing so great that you have a duty to maintain greatness and keep things going as they have been. Because again, nobody knows who the hell your family is. All right, y'all are just average people in the middle. And you don't have a duty to keep things going. Now, your family's in the middle. There's no dynasty. There are only dynasties at the top. So the middle class, you're the people who are told to follow your passion, all right, do what makes you happy, continue being okay if you want to be okay. And as long as you feel okay, then everything's good. This is just completely acceptable. Now, I will submit to you and admit to you as the host of this show that I come from a lower middle class family and community. Not lower class, lower middle class. You got the middle class, can be a wide gap. You got people in upper middle class and middle class, lower. I come from a lower middle class background. I come from a lower middle class community. And this is the way that people thought, what I just described. This is how people think where I come from. It is the way people act where I come from. And to this day, this is the way those people who come from where I come from still are to this very day. They're still like this. There's also, again, and most people, I've already told you this, most people don't change. They get older, they get fatter, they get uglier, but they don't really change. Mentally, most people don't change. They may do a little bit better than the previous generation, depending on how things are set up, but their mindsets are still the same. And this is how someone can come from a middle class background, let's say level 50 out of 100. Then the next wave of them goes up to a level 60 or 75 or even 80 of the middle class. Then the next wave, though, because of the comfort provided by the previous wave who got up to a level 80, they'll be down at a level 60, maybe a level 55. Why? Because of the comfort provided by the previous one. It's not like there's a dynasty that was created. They just did a little bit better than the previous. Now you're just doing better than most people in the middle, but you're still in the middle. You understand? So I also admit and submit to you this. I am actively working. This is a work in progress to undo as much of this nonsense programming as possible for my own psyche. I'm always working to undo this programming. It is still, even to this day, a continued work in progress. Any of you who comes from the middle class, and I would bet that's most of you, you need to be doing the same work all the time. You need to understand what I'm saying, and then you need to do the work on undoing the bullshit. If you do nothing from where you are right now and just maintain the average of what you've been doing, things will continue to be okay. You'll be all right. You'll have food on the table. You'll have a roof over your head. You'll have a car to drive, or at least a way to get around. You can hop in an Uber if you need to. You can avoid dire situations for the most part. You may have some calamities or issues that come up, but for the most part, you're not in some dire situation like cardboard box that was sleeping at night. All right, this state of apathy is the trap in and of itself. The apathy of being in the middle is the trap in and of itself, because you have nothing pushing you to go further or higher or better or faster or doing things now or moving with urgency. You don't have anything pushing you because you're in an okay position. This is the part that I want you to understand. Being okay is the worst position to be in. You either want to be doing amazing or you want to be doing terrible. But being okay is not where you want to be. The middle class is where the government and the people in the upper class, if you didn't know, this is from where they draw all their resources. Why? Because first of all, the bulk of the people are in the middle class. So if the government wants to collect taxes, they collect it from the middle class people who have jobs, and people with jobs get taxed first, and you get taxed the most because the government can take your money straight out of your check before you see a dime of it. That's where the government gets a lot of their money. Not the bulk of it necessarily, but they get a lot of it because they have so many of you, and there are more of you being created on a consistent basis. And also the people in the upper class, usually they own something that produces money, and the money that gets produced is money coming out of your pocket, middle class people. You're the people that they sell the stuff to. They sell their things, the stuff that they sell it to middle class people. They can't sell it to lower class people because lower class people are all broke. They ain't got no money. You can't sell to them. They can only sell it to the middle class folks. All right, you're the customer. You're the buyer. So this is where the government and the upper class get all their resources from people in the middle. Because again, I just told you, poor can't buy anything. They ain't got anything. They also can't really get taxed that much because they don't make that much money. People in the poor level. All the money is coming from the people in the middle. So this whole concept of taxing the rich that you hear people talk about, usually is middle class people talking about this, or people who are closer to the upper class, but let's say they're upper middle class. These are your academics and scholars. They're talking about, well, we got to tax the rich. And what they're saying is they're saying that to appease more people in the middle class. Like, oh, the rich are the problem. The people at the upper class are the problem. No, it's the people in the middle class who are the problem. The fact that you're in the middle class and you don't have urgency to get out of it, that's the actual problem. It has nothing to do with taxing the rich. By the way, tomorrow we're going to talk about that very concept. And all of this is coming, again, from people in the middle. All the resources get taken from people in the middle. You understand this? If the rich were to get taxes levied upon them, this doesn't happen because rich people can work the tax code in America to avoid taxes any way that they wish. They have the resources to do so, and they have the help and the insight to be able to do so, whereas middle class people do not have it, or they're not aware of it. The government would just continue taxing the people in the middle class, because people in the middle class, you don't have the option of opting out of taxes because you get a paycheck, and the government just takes money out of your paycheck before you get it. You have no say in the conversation. See, people at the upper class, they run businesses. They get the money and then they pay the government. See, they pay the government second. They get paid first. You pay the government first and get paid second. That's the difference. All right, you want to change that equation, you got to get out of the middle class. That's it. That's the answer to the question. And this is why, along with what I told you a month ago in that 4-part series, you want to exit the middle class as quickly as possible for all the reasons that I said: the mental reasons, the financial reasons, the logistical reasons, the being in the masses reason, and for every other reason that I've talked about here today, if anything caught your ear. Let's recap today's class, which is the middle class curse. Again, go listen to that 4-part series that I did a month ago on why the middle class will no longer exist on a strategic and tactical level. Today's more mental level. Number one, at the lower class, you have to go help the family or help yourself because your situation is only going to get more fucked up if you do nothing. So you have internal motivation. On the rich side, point number two, if you're rich or wealthy, you're in the upper class, you have a duty to keep the dynasty going of your last name. Your last name means something, your family name means something, your reputation means something, and you are not allowed to mess it up. Even if you want to mess it up, you're not allowed to mess it up, even though it's getting harder for upper class families to instill this in their kids because of the internet and smartphones. Kids are getting access to more things that may go off the beaten path of what the family wants you to do to maintain a dynasty, but the concept still exists. Number three is the middle class. You're the people who have it the worst because you have no internal ingrained drive to do anything different. You also don't have anything great already established in your family name to maintain. So this is where apathy comes in. This is where people are just okay. You're all right just getting by. You're okay just staying average. And this is the reason why most people are average, because the bulk of people exist in the middle class. And because they don't have any internal drive to do anything, this is the reason why motivation and inspiration and anything that'll pick you up and get you ready to go and move you to action, that's why these things are so popular, because most people in the middle class need them because they have no other reason to move, get off of their asses and actually do something. Okay? So it doesn't mean motivation is a bad thing. It means you need to use it so that you can get the same job that someone in the lower class has to change the situation, or same job someone in the upper class has to maintain the greatness of a situation or to create a great situation so that you actually do have a dynasty. You can tell your kids need to do something to maintain the family name. But first, you got to make the family name actually mean something. And that requires you getting up off of your ass and doing something different. All that said, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. And that's where I will help you get up off of your ass and get moving, get urgent, get serious about what you want. And then we'll get a strategy and a system for making it happen. I will coach you along the way. And we do that from there to there, from here to there. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Link down below in the description. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about taxing the rich since I brought that up. Work on your game. Dre,